Hey, what's up? This is Trey Pierce, audio engineer,
digital director,
director of financial planning and analysis,
senior creative director of A&R,
program director, morning show host,
and you're listening to the Springboard
Music Podcast.
And I wish I could say that I had some like magic solution of like how to properly do that, but I think it's just knowing yourself. And I mean, I'm 30 years old. At the time, I was 29, so like still so young. Like I'm still learning who I am. And every day and every year that passes, you know, you grow and you change and evolve and figure out like what the right things are for you, whether that's personally, professionally, like all aspects.
The music industry is full of a lot of friendships, a lot of spontaneity, and a whole lot of creativity. This is where we enter in an entertainment attorney. Elizabeth Lombardi is an entertainment attorney at CAA, Creative Artists Agency. She also is on the advisory council for the Troubadour Society, which is a young professionals group through the Country Music Hall of Fame. Shameless plug, I am a member. But without further ado, I would love for you to sit and listen to this beautiful interview with Elizabeth Lombardi. When you lived in Chicago, because that's where you're from, were you around a lot of the music scene? Because I know, like, isn't there Lollapalooza and there's a lot of jazz influence? Were you into the music scene when you lived there?
Not really. So I lived in Barrington. I'm from Barrington, which is a northwest suburb of Chicago. So I lived in Chicago until I was 18 and then moved to Nashville for college. So I really wasn't an adult in the city of Chicago. My parents never would have let me go to Lollapalooza if I had ever asked. But that also wasn't really my kind of music. I loved country music. And fortunately, Chicago is a big country market. So just about every country tour came through Chicago. So I definitely went to a lot of concerts growing up. But that was at like out in Tinley Park at their amphitheater, which I don't know what it's currently named, but used to be the World's. And that's where I went to my first concert. And then grew up going to see Kenny Chesney at Soldier Field. Just about it.
That's so cool.
Would go to shows at Wrigley. And then we had some smaller arenas out in the suburbs that I would go to shows to as well.
So I know you went to college in Nashville at Belmont. Why did you choose Belmont from Chicago? What did you think you were going to do? And where did that come from?
Yeah. So like I said, just loved country music. I was born in 93, so I'm a 90s baby, and grew up obviously in the heyday of Britney Spears and NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and Christina Aguilera. Like that was my jam. I loved Britney Spears. Like she was next to God for me.
No, same. Me too.
Which now everything involved with her is just really sad to me. So I try to just not pay attention to it, but loved pop music when that was in its heyday. And then when I was in middle school, my family and we started driving out to Colorado every year to go skiing. And the only stations that would come in as we're on this 16-hour drive to Colorado were country stations, which also growing up, like my mom, we used to listen to Alan Jackson and Deanna Carter and Mindy McCready and just some older, 90s country. But it was really in those long drives to Colorado, like starting in middle school, that we as a family started to get really into country music. So then as a middle schooler and high schooler, I'm pretty sure people at my high school thought it was super weird because I was so into country music. And no one else really was, despite the fact that Chicago actually is a big country market.
Well, and LOL to all of them now, because I guarantee you they are all Morgan Wallen fans. Guaranteed.
100%. As soon as everyone left, like the Chicago bubble, and went to their, like big colleges and cornfields and had nothing to do but drink beer and listen to country music, then they all became country fans. At that point, I was in Nashville. But Yeah, so I always loved music growing up, but then and it was just everything about it was so fascinating to me. And like going back again to Britney Spears, like I knew who her managers were and her label and like her whole team.
How'd you know that?
I just like figured it out. I mean, I don't know if there really was Google at the time, but I just was so obsessed with everything to do with her career. So, I mean, I remember getting like DVDs, or maybe they actually were VHSs at the time, like just behind the scenes footage at her shows and things like that. I know too, I want to say I was in like third grade. My dad and I went to see her on one of her tours. I want to say it was like the Dream Within a Dream tour.
Yes.
This might be like way too much detail, but I don't know if my dad purchased it or how we got there, but we went to her sound check before the show.
I just got chills. That's amazing.
It was so cool. So as I assume I was like 8 years old, an 8-year-old with my little like handmade Britney Spears shirt that I, made with my mom. Like I went to her sound check, and it all makes sense now, like looking back why I work in music. But, I didn't realize it at the time being so young that like, oh, I could actually go do this myself. But so I went through, like I said, like that pop phase, and then got really into country. And truly how I discovered Belmont and realized like, okay, I'm actually going to pursue a career in music was I was 16. I was a junior in high school. And up to this point, I was going to be a teacher, go to Illinois State. My parents told me we're only paying in-state tuition. So that, there's only a few options in Illinois. And so anyways, I go to a show at the Sears Center in Hoffman Estates, which is a suburb of Chicago. And an artist brought me on stage at that show.
Who?
So it was Jake Owen. And it's a fun story, and I won't go totally into it, but I had met him a year prior at a Britney Spears concert. So it was like the circus tour, and he walked by me at that show, and this was in 2009. So it was a long time ago, and I don't even think at that point, like he hadn't had a number one single at radio or anything like that. But I recognized him at the show and took a picture with him. Mind you, like this is 16-year-old Elizabeth. So I freaked out. At that point, I'd never met anyone famous or seen anyone. And we took a picture together. And then the following year, he came to town, and I, like the fangirl that I was, brought the picture, brought a Sharpie. I knew I was going to be close to the stage. And so at one point when he was by me during the show, he signed the picture and wasn't singing at the moment. So I just said, like, I met you at Britney Spears last year. And he like looked up at me, remembered me, and then, went on with the show. And a little while later, he told the crowd that it was like an embarrassing story, but that he had come to Chicago for a Britney Spears concert. And he goes, and that girl, pointing at me, was the only girl to recognize me that night, and she made my night. So now I'm going to make hers. And he like turned around and brought me on stage.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was really cool, especially as a 16-year-old, having this very attractive, awesome, country singer bring you on stage. So he like sang a whole song to me and did the whole thing. And obviously at that point, I just became such a big fan of his, even though, I mean, I already was, but so that happened. And I want to say it was like the next week. Like that had such an impact on me. It was the next week that I discovered Belmont and the music business program. And, I'm not a singer. I knew like, I'm not going to be the one that's bringing someone on stage and making their night, making their life, giving them an experience like that. But I can be a part of giving those experiences to other people, because without a doubt, that was like the coolest thing that had ever happened to me.
Yeah. That's insane and so serendipitous. Like your love for Britney Spears, being at that concert, but then also your love for country music and doing all this research and knowing what everybody looks like, and then recognizing somebody, taking a picture. Little did you know, but then your intentionality of like, I'm going to remind this person. It's just a way that shows in the very, very beginning of you having the relational networking piece that you need for this industry. Like that small, like, I'm going to bring the photo and remind him that we've met before.
Right.
That tenacity will carry you through the rest of your career. It's
100%.
amazing.
Well, I mean, looking back on that now and having you say that to me, I'm like, yeah, that does make sense. I mean, I think at the time it was 100% that I was just a fangirl, but it is true. Like, I mean, now, you know, there's moments where you're in a room and there's someone you want to talk to, or maybe I briefly met them 10 years ago because I've been in Nashville for 12 years now. And, you know, sometimes you have that little voice in your head that's like, they're not going to know who I am. They're not going to remember me. But just having like the confidence to go up to them and reintroduce yourself, or, you know, remind them of who you are. And then that leads to a coffee meeting and a lunch meeting, or, you know, you don't know what going back up to someone is going to lead to. But that is a very important trait, I guess, to have to work in this industry for sure.
I'm curious because you chose entertainment law. That's like the hardest. If you want to work in the music industry, why did you choose like the hardest thing to do?
It's definitely not always the easiest, but I mean, I feel like there's someone in radio promotions probably doesn't think it's the easiest thing either.
Yeah.
You know, they're the ones who are trying to get ads and get a song up the charts. Like that's not easy. You know, people in publishing trying to get songs cut, trying to get them in front of the right people. Like that's not easy either. I mean, it's certainly not the most exciting to have to read contracts all the time, but and it can be very challenging without a doubt. But why did I choose it? So obviously, I don't know if I even really answered your question earlier of why I ended up picking Belmont. And I mean, I think it makes sense, but you know, I ultimately decided to come to Nashville because I knew I wanted to work in country music without a doubt. So it was only, you know, a couple months after that whole Jake story happened that I came and visited Nashville for the first time and visited Belmont. And I mean, once you step foot on that campus, you'd be crazy not to love it. It's beautiful. It's only getting more beautiful.
It's right in the heart of the city. Like you can walk to everything.
Right. So I came to visit Nashville the first time. It was June of 2010. So it was right after the flood had happened. And even with, you know, all these buildings that were still having like sewage being, you know, funneled out of them, or even after all of that, like Nashville still was just so beautiful to me. And I just felt so excited to be here, and visiting Belmont, like I was sold. So once I knew I was going to go into the music business program, it just kind of like, it was off to the races from there. So I obviously went through undergrad and studied music business and interned and did all the volunteering at events and all the things that all Belmont music business students are doing. But through all of those experiences, I mean, I certainly enjoyed working in or interning in radio promo. It was super fun. You know, I did marketing at labels and with like CMT and GAC, did some production stuff. But I mean, truthfully, like why I ended up choosing to go to law school was, it was kind of twofold. Of when I graduated undergrad in 2015, you know, despite all of my internships and the huge network that I had made, and I went back down that list of people trying to find a job, there wasn't a position that was at any of the companies I'd interned at. And, you know, I just was one of a lot of music business students coming out of Belmont trying to get the same 20 jobs, if that, on Music Row. And I, I'm very close with my family, and in talking with them for a little while, even before finishing undergrad, my dad was putting the bug in my ear of maybe you should continue your education and go on and get an advanced degree, and just to differentiate yourself from everyone else. So I had the opportunity to apply and go to Belmont Law after graduating undergrad, and ultimately just kind of like took a risk and took a chance and decided to go for it. And so I kind of went to law school on a whim, which is not what most people do.
No,
But
because it's so hard. My brother went to law school and he knew from day one, like he had always wanted to be a lawyer. And yet, like when he got into law school, it almost chewed him and spat him out. Like it's so hard.
it's definitely very hard. And I had some really tough moments with it for sure. Like I won't try and hide that, but it was one of those things where, I, at least approaching my first semester, my thought process was not that much time, not that much money would be lost if I just gave this a shot and see what happens. So, once I made it through that first semester, it was just kind of like, okay, well, I made it through, so I might as well keep going. And then obviously 3 years later and passing the bar exam, I was finally out and done. But I also went into law school very much with the mindset of I am doing this as a mechanism to work in the entertainment industry. I really did not have any desire to practice law in any other capacity or in any other industry. So there were certain aspects of law school that I really did not enjoy, or I felt a bit like an outcast from some of my classmates who were just super gung-ho about trial ad and learning about all the aspects of litigation and evidence and criminal law, and like all that stuff was so cool to learn about. But it wasn't what was fueling me to keep going and get through it.
We talked about a lot of the internships you had in college. If anybody wants some light reading, look up Elizabeth Lombardi's LinkedIn page because it is pages. It's not a page. You did so much and you're still doing so much, and we'll get to that. But what would you say was the key to getting an internship, picking an internship? You talked about all the music business students in Nashville that are looking for jobs. What do you think made you stand out? What was the key to being evidently so successful at getting them?
Yeah, I definitely had a lot. I think between undergrad and law school, I had 13, maybe it was 12. I had an intern supervisor once who told me, like, your tombstone will read like the girl who interned, which was so true. I took so much like identity and pride in all of my internships. But I think the key to getting them is being personable and networking, honestly. Like Belmont has great resources and tools for its students to find internships, whether it's posted through like their platforms that they use, or going, I want to say there were internship and like career fairs and all of that. But ultimately though, I mean, even with all those tools and resources at your fingertips at Belmont, like it's on you to go and apply and to follow up and to get your name and your face in front of the people that you want to work with. So I think my first internship was so basic. And I want to say I only went in like one day a week, and I think it was during my sophomore year of college. So it might not have even been for like class credit at that point. I think I maybe got paid, and I was laminating like maps for a festival. Like it was nothing crazy, but it was one name on my resume. And to get my resume started, because prior to that, I mean, I nannied in high school and I had the photography job in high school and I worked at a bike shop in high school, but no one cares about any of that. I mean, obviously it's work experience, and I feel like that's lacking in today's world, a desire to work and, get out there. So that means something, and it's the starting point for students going into college and straight out of high school. But that first music industry company, it doesn't really matter where it is. It's just like you got to get it. And if you're laminating maps for a festival, like be the best laminator you can possibly be.
I totally agree with that. No, that makes so much sense. And even while you're laminating, people are seeing your face. They know who you are. You can set up like, hey, can I go to coffee with you for 45 minutes any day of the week and pick your brain or get to know your story? And honestly, like sit in my seat and interview somebody, just not officially and get to know them and build a network that way. Like take the easy job because you're going to get a huge benefit from it.
100%. I mean, I still do that today. I think, like I said, like being personable and just having the confidence internally to go up and talk to people is just so important. And at the end of the day, like we're all just people. So even if you think like, oh my God, that person's such a big deal, like I can't go talk to them. It's like, no, like they're just a person just like me and you. They get nervous too. I can guarantee at some point they were scared to go talk to someone. It's just like, take that risk, like the 2 seconds of courage thing, just go do it and get in front of them and talk to them. People also love to talk about themselves. So like if you want to just go talk to someone and get some experience, like just ask them questions, like you said, put yourself in your shoes and interview them.
I think that's something I've learned in my time in Nashville is the music industry feels so like, cutthroat, everybody's out for themselves, but it could not, I mean, there's some aspects of that, but I feel like it could not be more opposite when it comes to giving of people's time. People want to help other people achieve their dreams in this town, which is amazing. And I will say on a personal note, I can back up what Elizabeth is saying about like just meeting with people on a whim because I messaged you on LinkedIn for this interview and you were like, let's grab lunch. So we met and we had lunch and you were like, how'd you hear about me? Why do you want to interview me? And I was like, well, because you have a really cool job. And like from then on, like we've stayed in communication and contact for, gosh, we're coming up on a year now and we're finally doing the interview, but like there's been so much great conversation through it. And you weren't just like, yeah, totally. I'll like do this with you for an hour and that's that, wash my hands. You're like, no, I want to get to know you. Let's go for lunch, which is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, like everyone's personalities are different. And I just really value people and learning your stories. And, I'm a human and I've gone through things in life. And I think when you can kind of like break down that barrier and see that of someone else, like they're more understanding of you when life happens. I think that's really important in a professional setting. But also, yeah, I mean, I just love talking to people. So, but that is just something that is so valuable and can be utilized to anyone's benefit. And I think just getting to know people, whether you're sitting at your internship laminating, walk around the office, like make your face seen and just go up and say hi to people, say good morning, good afternoon, ask how their weekend was. Like, don't make yourself small. I'm not saying that you should make yourself too big. Don't draw unwanted attention to yourself, but just be normal and chill and get to know people.
We've talked about the internships, but you also did CMA EDU. Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Yes. So it's been about 10 years probably. Since
So maybe it's evolved.
I'm not sure what it's like these days, but I know it was just starting during my undergraduate career at Belmont, and I was the events coordinator, I think was my title. So I believe CMA EDU is CMA's version of just getting plugged into the college network. And I hope and I think that they are on a lot more campuses at this point. But back when I was involved with it at Belmont, we maybe had monthly meetings. I really don't remember, but I was a part of getting people to come and speak at our meetings and just share their experience in the industry, and then give students the opportunity to ask questions and network with them. I know I was responsible for bringing Stormy Warren onto Belmont's campus
Whoa.
way back when. And I think it had to have been maybe like the week of Thanksgiving. Maybe we only had like 10 people show up, which was sad. And I was so embarrassed. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
But you did it. You put yourself out there.
But yeah, no, he came on, and obviously Stormy's so great. So, that, and him and I have kept in contact now. So, I mean, I've known Stormy for 12 years and just went to an event of his with his new iteration of what he's doing in his career a couple weeks ago. So like, that's another thing too, is once you reach out and make those contacts with people, is maintaining that relationship is really important. And it might happen, by a text or an email or running into someone at an event once every 2 or 3 years, but just keeping in contact and then maybe sending a follow-up email after of, hey, it was so great to see you. Like, glad to see you're doing well. Would love to, you can leave it at that if that's really all you got to say, or if you're wanting more of a catch up with someone, would love to grab lunch or coffee soon.
I know that has been so beneficial in just maintaining relationships, and you never know what opportunities are going to come from that, like, just don't be afraid to be vulnerable, but don't be afraid to ask questions. Having that balance of sharing and asking questions and being inquisitive is important when you do get the opportunity to meet with those people. I also want to ask you about, because now let's talk about what you do now. You are a business affairs executive, basically for the Creative Artist Agency, which, if people want to know even more than what we talk about, it's a great agency. Do your research, look it up. But what can you tell us about what you do?
Yeah. So now, like you said, I work at CAA, and I've been there for 5 or 6 months now. So I'm still fairly new, and I'm entirely new to the agency world. So my practice of law within the last 5 years since I've been licensed here in Tennessee has ranged from being in-house to being in private practice. I actually exited the music industry for about 2 years and worked in healthcare.
Whoa.
So now I'm back. I knew I wanted to practice law. I did not go through the hell that is law school to not practice law.
Right.
So I came out and knew that it was going to be tough to find a job within entertainment. I had networked with so many entertainment attorneys. I also had, a good handful of internships in law school. And I'd been told by enough attorneys, like, you just need to go learn to be a lawyer, and then you can come back to entertainment, because no one's going to want to teach you how to be a lawyer within the entertainment industry.
So they couldn't be symbiotic? Like, you had to know how to be a lawyer in a different industry to then come into this industry?
Well, people told me that, but I was very much like, well, no. Like, yeah. I'm going to do it because I don't want to go do anything else. This is the only thing I want to do.
Well, and I feel like that would confuse knowledge. Like, well, in this industry, we do this, but now I'm relearning this whole new industry. Yeah, that wouldn't make sense to me.
I do think that there's definitely value in learning how to be a lawyer, no matter what industry you are in, because law school does not teach you how to be a lawyer. It teaches you the black letter law and how to get through law school. It teaches you how to think critically, how to deal with, a high volume of work, the amount of reading that, I'm 5 years out and I'm just now like reading books for fun again. Like it was so much reading in law school. Like there's obviously so many components that are preparing you for the practice of law, but it doesn't translate to your 9 to 5, what you're doing in your job, in my opinion. My internship experience showed me that and gave me a taste and a sense of what that would be, but law school did not. So anyway, when I had these different people telling me, you just got to go learn to be a lawyer and then call me in 2 years, it was just kind of like, no, I'm just going to keep calling you now because like I said, I just didn't want to go do anything else. But
there's that tenacity.
Also, though, one of those things where I'm like, okay, I'm on my own. I'm not in school anymore. I got to make money. I got to survive and pay my bills, and I'm an adult, and my parents aren't taking care of me anymore. So if there's not an entertainment job, well, I just have to get a job. So right out of law school, I studied for and took the bar, and thank goodness passed on the first time.
Wow, that's hard.
It's definitely hard. I will go ahead and give a shout out to Belmont Law. It's not that hard when you go to Belmont Law because their bar passage rates are so phenomenal, and they really do equip and prepare their law students so well for the bar exam. That is not to say it wasn't still very difficult. It was without a doubt the worst 3 months of my life preparing for that exam. So it was still very hard, but Belmont Law is just like far supreme in preparing their students for the bar exam. But anyways, I passed the bar. I get licensed in November of 2018, and I started clerking full time as a licensed attorney at a general civil litigation firm here in Nashville. And that firm did not hire new lawyers as associates. It was just kind of their general rule. It was a very old school firm, but it was the perfect situation for me. A classmate of mine had been doing that throughout school and then up through taking the bar. And then he got a true full-time job at another firm. And so he was leaving, and they wanted someone else to come in and do the grunt work and essentially be an associate without full-time pay, full-time benefits, and like truly, investing in someone and building a future at that firm.
So why did you say yes to it?
I said yes to it because I needed a job. 1, it was making money. 2, it was experience that I did not have up to that point. All of my internships in law school were in-house, so I had no firm experience. And I also will say that I didn't want firm experience. Law firms scared me. Billable hours scared me. I thought that working at a law firm meant you're just miserable and hate your life, which is not the truth. But so I viewed this as an opportunity to get some firm experience. And I also went in, and when I interviewed, I wasn't dishonest with them. I told them I want to work in the music industry, and they were like, that's great. We're happy for you. You should do that. You can work here for 40 hours a week, and you can go to lunches, and you can interview and do whatever it is that you want to do, so long as you get the work done that we give you.
That's amazing.
It was the perfect situation right out of school for me. So that's literally exactly what I did. I got experience. I got my work done. I built a little bit more of a community within the legal community in Nashville outside of entertainment. Made some contacts there, which Nashville is so small that those contacts, knew people in the industry or were related to someone in the industry or married to someone who's related to someone in the industry.
Totally.
So it was still like there, and that's another thing going back to the just like talking to people and getting to know people. If I would have just gone into that job and thought, okay, well, I'm here my 40 hours a week, getting my work done and just continuing to network in the music industry. There's no need to invest and get to know the people here because they're not doing that thing. I wouldn't have realized that one of the attorneys was the brother-in-law to the guy that runs Whiskey Jam. Like, so
Oh,
it was just, Nashville is small that way. So it's like you build that relationship and you maintain that. So like I said, that's what I did. And I worked at that firm for about 6 months until the next thing came along. And that next thing was a temp contract position in-house at a record label and publishing company in their business and legal affairs department. And to me, that was like the holy grail, like, oh,
yeah.
the odds are, ascending or descending. And this is my in. And also like, haha, you suckers, like I did this in 6 months. I didn't need to go learn to be a lawyer somewhere else. Like I'm doing it here now. This is where I'm learning to be a lawyer, practicing law in the music industry. So, I went and did that job. And I also didn't let the fact that it was a temporary position scare me because it was just more experience. And it's obviously way easier looking back to think, oh, that was the stepping stone to the next thing. Like you don't always realize that what you're doing is the stepping stone.
No, you don't. And I will say temp positions, at least my experience has been, is a temp position can last for like a year, 2 years. It feels much more permanent, but like they don't want to say it's permanent for whatever back end reasons.
Right. And I do think that just as a person in valuing yourself, if you are in a temp position for 2 years, you might want to make sure that there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Yes. And my position truly was a temp position. There was no guarantee of it turning into anything else. And it ultimately did not turn into anything else. But it was 6 months or 7 or 8, 9 months, however long it was, of true legal experience in the music industry. And that was where I got the taste of this is what it's like to be an entertainment attorney. I loved being in-house at a label. And it was my first real exposure to publishing as well. But like back on all of my internship experiences in undergrad, I interned at several labels. I interned at Black River and Warner and Big Machine. So I knew that world. But like I said, it was temporary and it ended in December of 2020. And so then I came back from the Christmas break in January of 2020 and was like, well, here we are again. Got to find another job. And
that had to have been exhausting to like keep finding all these temp things.
It was. It definitely was. And I won't lie either and say like it was I don't know if this is like a being a woman thing. Like this is something that only girls think of, but just like having like self-confidence is tough sometimes. And I kept feeling after having worked, like, so the great thing that job gave me was actual experience and working with this network that I had built. And up to that point, all I'd done with all of those people was go to coffees and lunches. So, I can sit there at coffee and lunch and chit chat with you all I want to, but until you have the experience of working across the table from me, like you don't really know what my skills are.
Right.
Or what I can bring to the table. So in January of 2020, I'm going back down my list again of the network that I'd built and trying to find another position. And because I'm stubborn, I'm only looking in entertainment because that's really all I wanted to do. But again, it's one of those things, I got bills to pay and a life to maintain. And I just have to make money and have a job. So, I was looking outside of entertainment as well for other just in-house positions within Nashville. And so it was kind of like a twofold interview process of going through my entertainment contacts and then also trying to like find any other contact I could have, because I pigeonholed myself a little bit just in entertainment. But those entertainment contacts, there wasn't a legal position in Nashville.
Well, at that point, we're hitting COVID. And so people are, downsizing. They're not doing as many tours. They're not signing as many people.
100%. It hadn't quite hit yet. It was just like what is this thing that's coming? Like people were just kind of starting to talk about it. But this was like January and February of 2020. So it wasn't full blown a thing yet. But ultimately there were several positions that were somewhat legal related in entertainment at that time, but it was either like you didn't actually have to have your license to practice law for that position. It was in business affairs somewhere, but you didn't really need to be a lawyer, or I didn't have anywhere near enough experience yet. So, that 2 to 3 years out of school, like I'm so glad I'm past that, because it's a tough spot to be in if you're looking for a job. And I'm sure that goes for any position, any job, whether that's in entertainment or not. It's just kind of this unfortunate time period in your career where you're like, I don't really have enough experience yet to apply for these 5 to 10 year positions, or 5 to 7. And I'm certainly not at the 10-year mark, but I'm not right out of school either. But anyways, all of that to say, I ultimately did not find an entertainment position in January of 2020. And in February of 2020, I accepted a position with HCA here in Nashville, which is a huge hospital company, and very, very dominant corporation in the healthcare industry.
So that's great, like a great thing to be affiliated with.
Oh, for sure. And Nashville's 2 biggest industries are healthcare and entertainment. So It's like, well, if I'm not going to be in the one, I'll go to the other. And so I started that position reluctantly. I didn't want to do it. My dad was like, Elizabeth, you're an idiot. If you don't take this job, I'm not paying for you. So like, you need to just go work. Like, you're an adult. What are you doing? So I reluctantly took that position. I started it on March 2nd of 2020. I trained in person for 2 weeks. And the first day doing that job was the day we were sent home because of COVID.
Oh.
So I not only was, fearful like everyone else in the world at that time, thinking COVID was going to kill us all, and, dealing with all these external forces, but I also was dealing with learning in a new industry I knew nothing about.
And on your own. I mean, literally 2 weeks in, you can't pop into somebody's office or pull them over to your desk to look at something.
No, and I was single and living alone, and I was just at my kitchen table. I didn't even have a desk. Like, I was at my kitchen table in my apartment, figuring it out. I will say, to toot my own horn, I did figure it out, and I ended up being one of the top attorneys on my team in that department.
That's incredible. I'm not surprised in the slightest, but that's incredible. What do you think? Was there anything from your experience doing entertainment law that surprisingly helped?
Well, I was still, so in that role, I was looking at contracts with hospitals and payers, insurance companies. And so it was obviously still all transactional. And that was another thing too. Like I wasn't just about to, if my unemployment period had extended, at some point you take a job just because it's a job. I wasn't quite at that point when I accepted this position. I was trying to be somewhat methodical in choosing that role. One, it was with HCA, like we talked about, huge company and dominating force in Nashville. And two, it was still in-house and transactional. So the skills that I'd be utilizing there and gaining would translate to whatever that next thing in entertainment would hopefully be. So I was reviewing agreements between all the different hospitals of HCA and insurance payers to get insurance companies to pay their denied claims. So
The ability that you had, though, to see through the black and white of that job and see where it was going to benefit you for your ultimate goal is amazing. And I think we all need to do a better job at that of, well, on paper, this isn't my dream job, but is
right.
it going to be, can I find a stepping stone here?
Right. Right. And again, that's like I said, it's hard to know when the thing that you're doing is the stepping stone when you're in it. But then sometimes it's also really clear. Like my first job, that was clearly a stepping stone. The temp job, I didn't want it to be a stepping stone. And it really, well, it was. As I continue on my path, I will explain why. But HCA, I didn't know what my future held at that point. And then especially once COVID hit too, I mean, we're all just trying to survive. And when the entertainment industry took such a huge hit, I mean, there was a part of me that was really grateful that my temp position with that label didn't pan out, because I would have been such a new hire that I could have been, the last one in, the first one out when the entertainment took such a huge hit. So, I mean, there's so many blessings in disguise that feel like such like heartbreak in the moments and so defeating. But then when you are a little bit removed from it, I mean, you learn, oh, this is why that happened. So, during COVID, and I was in my HCA job for almost 2 years. I'd hit a point where I was like, wow, I'm making really good money. I know how to do this job. I'm good at it. I have a good team here. I worked with good people. It's such a big company in Nashville. Like, you never know where this could lead. I thought maybe I won't go back to entertainment. Maybe this is it. But once the entertainment industry, started to come back, and then I was seeing all my friends doing entertainment things again, and I was not involved in it at all. I had so much FOMO that I was like, okay, no, like there's still a burning desire inside of me to go do this. And like, I have not achieved what I set out to do yet. So
people will say, like, don't do the music industry unless you have to do the music industry, like unless you can't not do it. And that's what I feel like you're explaining is like, I had a very solid thing going, but I couldn't not be a part of it. I had to go back.
100%. I definitely have had people over the years be very discouraging to me. And I think that probably stems from something inside of them. And that's something I've had to learn too. And as I've gotten older, I realized maybe they just were having a really bad day, or maybe they're not really happy in what they're doing yet. So, like I appreciate their honesty with me, but like, I'm going to take that and maybe in one ear and out the other. And so I'm hesitant to ever be discouraging to people, but this is a tough industry to get into. And so if you don't really want it, go find something else. I think that there's plenty of other industries, which regardless of what you're doing, I always think it's about who you know and utilizing relationships. But like if it's not something that you can't live without, then go live without it. It might be easier on the other side. I don't know, because it is something that is just so a part of me that there's been times where I wish it wasn't, but it just is. So, like I said, when things were starting to come back after COVID and I was seeing entertainment and my friends and just it started to boom again and shows were happening, just internally, I was like, all right, what are my next steps? What do I do? Where am I going?
Kind of like, what am I doing?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like, this is definitely something that I still want, but how do I get back? How do I pivot and transfer what I've been doing for the last year and a half to my, advantage and to just spin it where it's transferable and will get me in front of the right people again. And fortunately, I didn't have to think that hard about it because my next job came to me. But it was just like, it was a weird thing again, where I was kind of just in this mental state of like, what are my next steps? How am I going to do this? And I'd reached out to a few of my entertainment attorney contacts again, and just was kind of venting to them and just trying to get a feel of like, how do I get back in here? And my next position came to me, and ultimately it was from a few partners at a firm that I had done business with during my temp job, and they were looking for an associate. So
That's amazing.
they had remembered me from 2 years prior at that point, doing deals with them, and just thought, hey, like, where's Elizabeth at these days? And that's literally like how the first phone call was like, so what are you doing these days? And I'm like, funny you ask. I'm doing healthcare, but been starting to think of like, how do I get back? And so I went and interviewed and ultimately accepted that position, and did so with a little hesitation because it was at a law firm. And like I said earlier, I didn't think I ever really wanted to work at a law firm. But, you don't know something either until you try it.
There are a lot of things that I'm like, no, I definitely don't want to do that. And then you end up falling in love with it. And you're like,
Yes.
oh, I should never say never.
I'm such a firm believer of never say never, and always being open as well to whatever the next thing could be. You just don't know what's going to come your way. And I will say as well, you might love it, or you might learn that you hate it, but then you cross it off the list. You don't have to wonder anymore. I think that being able to cross things off the list is also something that's really powerful and important. So ultimately, I accepted that position, and I was like, heck yeah, I'm back in music. Like, we are back, baby. Like, let's do this. And that was my first true full-time position in the entertainment industry.
And how long from graduating college and then also graduating law school was that?
That would have been, you're making me do math. I'm a lawyer. That was 4 years out of law school. So 7 years out of undergrad.
Wow. So 7 years after saying okay, I've graduated, I want to be in the industry, your path took so long. And are you so glad that you waited it out?
Yes. That's where I know I can talk a lot and be long-winded, but that's where I think there's so much value in me sharing my
100%.
of how I got to where I am now. Plus also, like, I have had interviews where future employers have told me like, wow, you've been practicing for 5 years and you have 5 jobs. Like, not what's wrong with you, but like, that's a lot of jobs in not a long period of time. And I do think, the days of people staying in jobs for very long times are kind of over. Like, our generation has changed that. But 5 jobs in 5 years is a lot. So, I've given this spiel in a much more condensed version in an interview before, because it makes sense when I explain it all. I've never, knock on wood, I've never been fired or, had like a terrible experience by any means. So, I obviously always want to like caution or make sure that that's not what someone is thinking. But the number one thing that I think you have to have in wanting to do anything in the music industry too is patience and persistence. And I think in the last, 12 years since I moved to Nashville, 8 years since I've been out of undergrad, 5 years since I've been out of law school and practicing law, like that, those are two things that like I have had. And I didn't always want to be patient, and it wasn't always easy. But like looking back on it now, I'm like, well, if there's one thing someone can say about me, it's that I'm persistent.
I think that's very clear, even back to the Britney Spears Jake Owen story. Like, even looking back to that when you were 16 to, now, 12 years after, moving to Nashville, the whole thread, you're right. Like, it's so important to digest your story because it is a lot of patience and persistence, and also just tenacity and insight and wisdom of like choosing the right moves, even if on paper they don't look like the right moves. Like, you are very good at going after what you want with clarity and tenacity and care.
Well, and thank you for saying all that. That's very kind. But I do think that it's true. Like it's just such a relational business. Like I'm an attorney. That is like my trade. That's what I do. And being, a ferocious bulldog and being, like a zealous advocate for your clients. I think that's like a hot buzzword that lawyers use. But those things are really important. But at the end of the day too, I'm like, I'm just Elizabeth as well. And I care about people, and, I want to be the best I can be for my client, whether that's, when I was in private practice and that's an artist or a songwriter or a publishing company, or now being back in house, like having my company as my client, and then working and serving our clients of the organization, like that's really important. But also like I'm a person and you're a person, and being able to just maintain relationships and care about other people, I think is really important as well. And to me, that's what makes people stick out and makes people want to work with you and continue and maintain that relationship.
So you left that firm after 2 years, or how long? Had a year?
Actually was only there for a little over a year.
Okay.
So when I was talking about things that you cross off the list, like, again, never say never. I don't know what opportunities will come my way. But if I never build another hour or minute for the rest of my life, I think I would be happy. I think knowing yourself and knowing like that gut feeling I had about law firm life was kind of right. It wasn't my favorite. That's, again, I say all that to say, like, I don't know what the future holds for me. And I think as opportunities present themselves in life, like you can only approach a situation like in that moment, knowing like what is right in front of you, and making a decision based off of the cards that are, at play at that time. But I learned pretty quickly, like, okay, I don't think that this is the right fit for me. And I'm not really enjoying this. I wasn't very happy, despite the fact that it was my first true full-time entertainment law position.
It was everything you had chased, and it wasn't fulfilling.
No, it just, unfortunately, it wasn't. And that was also very discouraging and made me question a lot of things and made me think like, oh my God, I've been wanting to do this for so long. And now I'm here and I'm like, oh, wait, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Is this what I want to do? Like I said, like it made me question a lot of things, but
how did you process that? Like, what was that season like? Let's unpack that for a minute. Cause I can totally relate to that of, I climbed to what I thought was the top of the mountain, and then I found myself having like a quarter life crisis of
right.
like, It's the music industry is so elusive, and the parts that they let us see from the outside look amazing.
Right.
So processing that was a process.
Yeah. No, it was definitely a process. And I wish I could say that I had some like magic solution of like how to properly do that. But I think it's just knowing yourself. And I mean, I'm 30 years old. At the time, I was 29. So, like, still so young. Like, I'm still learning who I am. And every day and every year that passes, you know, you grow and you change and evolve and figure out like what the right things are for you, whether that's personally, professionally, like all aspects. So, you know, I think I'm still very much like learning who I am and evolving. But I think that process was trying to figure out like, okay, what exactly do I want? What do I think is going to fulfill me? Because I thought that this was the thing and it's not really feeling like the thing. And I think just trying to figure out like what are your strengths and weaknesses and knowing like where can I find the best fit for me. But in that too, it's like when you get to that spot that you've been like wanting to get to for so long and thinking this is it, again, like I don't ever want to be discouraging to anyone, but one thing I've learned and know about myself is like I can have very high expectations. And maybe lowering my expectations a little bit, again, whether that's personally or professionally or of situations or of people, like you will, if you lower your expectations a little, you'll be a little less disappointed. I still think that, you know, set the bar for yourself. Like don't settle, don't diminish you know, your own value and worth what in your work or in whatever you're doing, but just level setting, I think, is what is probably what got me there. And, you know, as I went through my job searching process again of what do I think is going to be the better fit for me and what will I find more fulfillment in, you know, I was drawn back to being in an in-house position. You know, I really love people. If that hasn't been conveyed yet, I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm like kind of blacked out right now too, like talking, like I don't even know what I'm saying, but
No, what you're saying is great. And I think when you say in-house position, you're talking about working for like exclusively with one company.
yes. So when you're in-house, yeah, you're like the company is your client. You're working like a normal job, like everyone else, like corporate job. And you're in the internal legal department. So an in-house role in my experience and why I really enjoy it is because I'm working with non-legal professionals. I feel like I can utilize my business mindset a bit more. And I just feel like I'm really a part of something and a part of a team. Like I'm definitely a little type A. Like I like structure and knowing like, okay, I'm going to work from 9 to 5. And, you know, some days that work extends well beyond 5 p.m. But, you know, this is where I'm going to be at this time. And this is what is expected of me and what I'm going to get done versus like the billable hours. It's like, well, you know, if I get up and go to the bathroom or if I, you know, go grab lunch with someone and it's not necessarily like a client, like that's wasted time. Like that's not time that you're billing. And that's like not built into, or that time is already in your day, but you're not actually like working. So
it's more of an hourly structure.
Yeah. I mean, it's 6-minute increments. It's awful.
Yeah.
But the in-house appeal to me, like I knew that was a better fit for me. And that's what I was seeking out again. But also in like finding fulfillment in what you're doing. I mean, I was thinking outside the box too. I was thinking like, do I still want to practice law? Like, is this something that like I really want to do forever or continue doing? And I looked into teaching. And
because you're Elizabeth, you've done it.
I will be doing it. But I looked into teaching full time last fall. Like I considered not continuing to practice law. So I obviously ended up accepting an in-house position with CAA. And going through that interview process, like I'd never felt so excited about a company as I did throughout this process, or throughout that process, I should say. And now being at CAA, like I've never been happier in a job. I do finally feel like I have achieved what I set out to do and am doing it, and I really enjoy it. And I'm working with really cool people and doing cool things.
Yeah, everybody should look at CAA's client list because I did last night, and there's Jimmy Fallon, there's John Mayer, Travis Barker, Hello Kardashians, Harry Styles, Ben Platt, Ariana Grande. It's insane. Like, who don't y'all have? You get to work with the best people. And I'm sure internally it's equally amazing.
Well, yeah, when I just said I work with cool people, I definitely meant my coworkers, but all of our clients are really cool too. We have very cool clients, and I'm specifically in music touring. So, I'm not working on movie deals or TV deals, but CAA does have movies and TV and sports and fashion and literary. And I love when we have like our all company meetings and I just get to sit there and be like, wow, this is so cool. Like I'm hearing about these sports deals that went down and like these movies that are coming out, and like it's so fascinating to me. And in those moments I get to feel a little bit of my less jaded music self, and I'm just like, oh wow, like that's like I can nerd out a little bit.
Yeah, the excitement comes back for a minute
in that. Yeah. But no, when I meant cool people, like I really enjoy my coworkers and the agents and all of their assistants that I get to work with now on a daily basis. And it's a really great company filled with really great people. And I am the only attorney in the Nashville office in music. And that was definitely a little intimidating to me at the beginning. But, it's just kind of one of those things where like, if it doesn't scare you, it's probably not worth it.
Yep.
And you just go and do it and figure it out. So my boss is based out of LA, but I'm working here in Nashville doing that. So, and one thing that I think too, kind of like we've been talking about this intertwined throughout, but just like relational stuff is, being the only attorney in the Nashville office, I thought it was really important that I establish myself and gain trust in everyone around me and start to build those relationships. And then also selfishly, I know that my job is to do the contracts and review agreements, and that is my main role. But I also love concerts. And like I think I'm a pretty cool person. Like I want to be at shows and involved in as many different things as I possibly can. So I really
didn't you go to Stagecoach this year?
I sure did.
Yeah, you did. You love your concerts.
I do. I mean, I've been going to concerts since I was 6 years old. Like my first concert was Spice Girls when I was 6.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, and my dad loves music and loves going to shows. Like our whole family, like I just grew up going to concerts. Like now working in music touring, like again, it's kind of like everything's making sense. Like I'm just in such a position or working now in this aspect or facet of the industry that is just like, of course I am. Like this is the perfect fit. And I never really thought that before, like, oh, I should work in, like the touring side of things. But I really valued or knew, it was very intentional, I should say, when I started this position of establishing myself in the Nashville office and having a presence there, Because I do think that as an attorney, obviously people might only come to you when something's wrong, and you don't want that to be the case. I'd rather someone feel comfortable with me and come to me on the front end of things and brainstorm, okay, how do we get this in a good spot before anything goes wrong? And also, like, I don't just want to be that lawyer in the corner that people only think of when something is going wrong.
Right.
So, from the start of this job, I was going out to lunches with agents, 1, if not 2 a week, and just getting to know them. Sat down and would ask everyone, where are you from? How long have you been here? What made you want to be an agent? What made you want to work in music? Like, very much having this same conversation that you and I are having right now, but with them. And then I think asking too, like, how can I be of value to you? Like, how can I serve you in this role? Like, what can I do here that is going to make a difference, and, best assist you? I think that that's really valuable too.
Those
And
are
that's
really
applicable to anything, to no matter what you're doing.
every job, no matter what you're doing, even if you're working at a restaurant, like, get to know your coworkers because you're with them more than you are at home, and ask those questions. Like, how can I be a good teammate? How can I be a good partner for you in your job, knowing now what my job is? How can we come together and make this force even stronger? That is asking those questions are signs of good employees.
Yeah. I think it just shows that, like, you care.
Yeah.
And that you're taking ownership in what you're doing. And hopefully, that pays dividends in some way someday.
We touched a little bit on you're about to be an adjunct professor at your alma mater, Belmont.
Yes. I'm so excited.
Tell us about what you're going to be doing.
So I will be teaching this fall our internship and career foundations course.
Hey, well, you are the star student for internship, so that makes complete sense.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So obviously I've been away from Belmont for 5 years, but I keep saying I'm so excited, but I really am. Like, I can't wait to go back to campus and be, like, reintegrated into the Belmont scene. But I'll be teaching in the Mike Curb College, so undergraduate students, in the, like I said, teaching internship and career foundations. So we'll be focusing on building your resume, how to make your resume, drafting cover letters. No one ever wants to do that. I don't even know if anyone really reads them, but they are important.
They're important. I will say I use them. They're very important.
Yes. And I obviously have used them a lot as well.
It expresses why you want the job. And if you don't know where to send it to somebody on LinkedIn that works in that company, and they'll get it to the right person.
I do think that what, unfortunately, our world is coming to is, like, we don't know how to speak to people anymore. And we're just used to, and I mean, sometimes when I'm texting, like, I can't end a sentence without typing out LOL, and I'm like, I didn't even know. Like, I get, like, so much of, like, the shorthand of things is just, it's becoming second nature to us. So, like, being able to write a complete sentence and convey and express a thought and feeling is starting to go away, and that's not good. So I do think that there's so much value in being able to express why you want something and being well-spoken, and professional, that the younger generation, and I'm not even old, but the younger generation, I think, is lacking. So I'm excited to work with them on that. I'm sure it will be a bit of a challenge, but Belmont obviously, brings in students that are very determined and passionate about what they want to do. So I'm sure it won't be too big of an issue, because it's also just exciting. I do think that with the course I'm teaching, it's a requirement before, like, it's a prereq to getting.
That's awesome that they require that, though.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Belmont for doing that. And I took this course as a student as well. So I remember taking it and being really excited about it because it meant that I could go intern and get that class credit. So we'll be focusing, like I said, on resumes and cover letters and networking and interviewing skills. And then I also will be teaching 3 sections of a senior capstone. I hope I'm not biting off more than I can chew here. While maintaining,
you might be, but you'll succeed.
my day job and my life outside of that. But I'm excited to be working with kind of like the 2 ends of the spectrum of students that will just haven't interned yet. Like I think they'll be sophomores. There may be a couple freshmen that are just getting started and being introduced to that world, and then working with seniors who have obviously had those experiences and are about to enter the real world. And I'll be helping them with that transition.
That's
So
incredible.
I
You do quite a lot. Not even like the Belmont side and then the CAA side, but then you're also on the advisory council for the Country Music Hall of Fame's Troubadour Society, which you recruited me for. And it's very fun. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's more, a lot of what we've been talking about is for people who want to get into the industry. And this is a great option maybe for some people like that, but also great for people who are already in it.
Yeah. So I've been on the advisory council for 2 years now. Troubadour Society is the Country Music Hall of Fame's Young Professionals organization. And its purpose is to drive younger individuals to the museum and to get them involved. So that it's for ages 21 to 45. So like young professionals is quite a wide range. But we have 4 events a year, and I've really enjoyed being a part of it. We typically, our biggest event of the year, I don't know when this is going to come out, but it's in September, and it's Nightfall at the Hall, and we have a live performance. I think I can say who's on it this year because, again, I don't know when this is coming out.
I think this will be in September, October. So I think you can talk about it.
Okay, well, it's also not really a secret, but Ian Munsick will be performing this year, which is so cool too. Because so cool. Ian went to Belmont, and I don't know if he remembers me, but we had classes together.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
So it's been fun to watch his journey as an artist here in Nashville. But yeah, so he'll be performing. Last year we had Lauren Elena, my hat show prints behind me. Like yes. This one is from last year's Nightfall at the Hall.
Oh, I love that.
That one was from 2 years ago. That one's from exhibit opening, and that's from Jake Owen's show at the Ryman, which is not Troubadour related. But yeah, so Troubadour, it's just that organization to get younger people involved with the Hall of Fame. It's a membership that you pay for. To me, it's $75 per year, which is not really a lot of money considering that you get 4 events that include food and drinks, and you network with other industry professionals. It's also not limited to just the music industry. And I actually have tried to get as many of my non-music friends involved with it as possible. And I've had a lot of them join, and they really, really enjoy it. I think because, since I don't work in music, like to them, those events are so cool. Whereas us who are in it, like we do stuff like that all the time. But it's definitely something that's really great to be involved in. And I will certainly be encouraging to my students who are 21 and up to participate and join, because that's something else too that like you can put on your resume and say you are a Troubadour Society member at the Country Music Hall of Fame, and this is just like to make it like applicable to networking or like building up your career aspects with it. Like put on your resume, like attend events, network with professionals, like that. There's value in that too. And, as much as we all love to just go to events and like have a good time and have a few drinks and just mingle and chat, like there's so much value in those types of events as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, when I went to the first event, I went alone because I don't have any friends that are members. Hopefully that'll change.
Yes.
But I went alone and I was like, okay, like talk to 3 people, like go meet 3 people, grab a drink, go meet 3 people. And so I found this table of 3 girls and I walked up and I was like, "Hey, I'm Rachel. Like, let's talk, let's get to know each other." And they all came alone too. And they had all found each other. And so we were this table of 4 women who all are members on our own, and we swap numbers and we follow each other and stuff. And it was so great because, you know, I just say that as an encouragement to people who are like, well, I don't want to go to these events by myself. Like everybody's going to have a buddy. I met 5 people that night that did not have a buddy and
Yeah.
did not come with anybody. It's really a lot of people who sign up on their own and want to meet people and take that by their own hands. And it was fantastic.
100%. I mean, when I joined and applied for the advisory council, I actually wasn't a Troubadour member before. Like I just applied for the council because an entertainment attorney that has been a longtime mentor of mine encouraged me to do so. And I didn't know anyone on the council except for her. I didn't know any members. Like I'd never really been involved at all. And so that was something, I did entirely alone too. And I showed up to our first meeting as like a council member and walked in the room. And, I did end up knowing a few people there once I got there, but you can't let that stop you or make you nervous or scared. Like I said, like have that 2 seconds of courage and just self-confidence to just go and talk to people, no matter what the setting is. But yeah, Troubadour's really great. If anyone listening to this wants to join, search like Country Music Hall of Fame, Troubadour Society, and you'll see that you can sign up and be a member. Use my name in the box so I get credit for you joining.
Please.
I appreciate it. I don't get anything from that. It's just part of my duties on as being a council member, but we would love to have you there. And if you do listen to this and come out, like make sure to come introduce yourself and say hi.
We have talked about so many things from Britney Spears to Jake Owen to shows in Illinois to going to Belmont Law School, all the internships, the 12 or 13 internships, the jobs, the temp job. Now, the full-time job at the firm, realizing that's not for you. Now being at CAA in the music touring space, the only music lawyer in their Nashville office. Would you say that you're living the dream finally after 7 years?
Living the dream. I think if I was living the dream, I'd be in like a villa on like the Amalfi Coast with like endless amounts of wine and pasta.
Yes.
That's so funny. I'm in a spot where I feel like I have achieved what I set out to do. And by no means does that mean that like I am at the top. I still have a long, long way to go. But yeah, if we talk back to 18-year-old Elizabeth who's moving to Nashville and is scared because she's leaving her family behind and knows no one in Nashville, but also was just so excited to be a part of country music and whatever that meant, because I didn't know at the time. I would say, yeah, like right now, like you're working with cool people who
Coworkers.
are cool coworkers who are serving cool clients that you are a big fan of, bringing really cool experiences to people. And I just think that music is so powerful, and especially live music. Like concert is to me, there's like no better place in the world to be than at a concert. Whether that's making incredible memories with your family. I mean, my family, we're big Kenny Chesney fans, and like there's nothing more meaningful to me than a Kenny Chesney show with my family. And we've seen him
almost 20 times. Like it's our thing. Like that's what we do every summer. So it's like I'm now a part of like bringing those memories to people. Like I said, whether it or you're with your family or you're not even going to remember the concert because you're having a really great time with your friends, or you're getting over a breakup, or you're falling in love with someone. Like there's just so much power, I think, in live music, and that's what I'm a part of now. So I guess, yes, I'm living the dream.
Thanks for listening to the Springboard Music Podcast. If there's something that resonated with you in this episode, or an episode that you would like for us to create in the future, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at Springboard Music on Instagram.